You're fired. Effective immediately. That's what she said. No warning, no private meeting, just those 4 words, cold, public, and final, spoken in front of my entire department. One minute, I was prepping for the biggest client presentation of my career. The next, I was being escorted out of the building by security like some criminal. And the worst part, I didn't even flinch. I just looked her straight in the eye, Victoria Shaw, the new director who had been gunning for me from day one, and said calmly, "I hope your 10 a.m. pitch goes well without me." She blinked. "What pitch?" I smiled. "The Vita launch, $20 million campaign, scheduled for today." Her face paled. That moment, that one tiny pause in her smug expression, almost made the months of silent sabotage worth it. But not quite, because behind that calm smile, I was burning with betrayal, with exhaustion, with 7 years of loyalty erased in under 2 minutes. So how did I get here? How did a top-performing strategist become disposable overnight? And what happened next when the truth about that campaign finally came out? Before I tell you this story, where are you listening from? Have you ever been betrayed by someone you trusted at work? Do you believe in workplace karma? Leave a comment if this hit close to home. You never know who else might need to hear it. I started at Medline Corps 7 years ago with nothing but a marketing degree, a secondhand laptop, and a fire in my chest that no one could put out. Back then, I was just another hopeful 20-something, trying to prove myself in a city where ambition filled every high-rise window. I was hired as a junior communications associate, the kind of role where you answer emails, triple-check slide decks, and say yes to everything, even if it means staying until midnight for a meeting you're not even invited to. And I did, every time. I didn't complain, I learned. By year 2, I was already managing small accounts. By year 4, I was building national campaigns with real reach. I found my rhythm, clear messaging, data-backed strategies, and a knack for reading the room before anyone else did. I didn't just deliver numbers, I delivered trust. And along the way, I built something better than a resume. I built a team that felt like home. There was Malik, whose designs turned even the driest product launch into a visual experience. Chelsea, who could land a media placement before her second cup of coffee. Jonah, our quiet analyst who saw trends no one else could. Lucy, our storyteller, her copy didn't just inform, it moved people. And Aaron, my assistant, the glue that held us all together on the craziest days. We weren't just colleagues, we were family. Birthdays, weddings, heartbreaks, breakdowns, we showed up for each other, always. I thought loyalty still mattered in this industry. I believed that showing up early, staying late, and fighting for your team would protect you from, well, you'll see. But if I could go back, maybe I would have noticed the cracks sooner. The extra eyes in meetings, the sudden shifts in reporting lines, the growing silence in rooms where my voice used to matter. Still, at the time, I told myself, just keep doing the work. Focus on the mission. Don't get distracted by politics. And so when she arrived, Victoria Shaw, I didn't see her as a threat. Not yet. But that was about to change. She walked into the conference room like she already owned it. Victoria Shaw. The name alone had already stirred whispers before she even set foot in the building. She's from Thermogen, someone said. She tripled their market share in under a year. Ruthless, another whispered, but effective. I didn't pay much attention at first. New execs came and went. That was just part of life in a growing company. But this time felt different. The announcement came from the CEO himself, a full department email titled, "Welcome our new VP of Strategic Marketing." Not a replacement, not a temporary hire, a restructuring. When Victoria introduced herself, she was all polish and poise, sleek hair, sharp navy blazer, a smile that never quite reached her eyes. "I'm here to streamline operations and align strategy with growth," she said. "Some of these changes might feel uncomfortable at first, but discomfort usually means progress." I smiled politely, nodded like everyone else, but something in my chest tensed. Within her first week, she reorganized the project pipeline. Meetings that once came through me now went directly to her. My team members started getting new assignments without my input. At first, I chalked it up to onboarding confusion. I even offered to help. "No need," she said crisply. "I've already reviewed the reports. We're pivoting on a few campaigns." That was my first red flag. Not the words, the tone. The way she dismissed years of experience like outdated software. Then came the sudden changes. New approval flows, new reporting structures. Team leads like me stripped of decision-making authority in quiet, subtle ways. Still, I told myself to be professional, be patient. Maybe she just needed time to understand how we worked. But that patience started to wear thin when I found out she held a creative meeting with my entire team without me. Malik mentioned it in passing, confused. She said, "We're going with a value pricing angle for the Vita campaign now." That didn't make sense at all. Vita's whole brand was built on premium innovation. Competing on price would kill the message we'd spent months refining. Something wasn't right. And for the first time, I started to wonder, was this just restructuring, or was I being strategically erased? It started small, like a slow leak in a ceiling, barely noticeable at first, easy to ignore. My name was left off a team update that went out to senior leadership. A minor oversight, I thought. Then, a few weeks later, a monthly performance report I'd written, complete with my phrasing, my layout, my analysis, was presented in the executive meeting by Victoria. She didn't change a word. When our CEO Daniel complimented her for the clarity of the data, she smiled graciously and said, "Thank you. I've been working on tightening up reporting formats." I waited for her to mention my contribution. She didn't. The first time, I let it go. Maybe it was a misunderstanding. Maybe she had planned to loop me in later. But then it kept happening. Client-facing summaries I created were sent out under her name. Strategic decks I built were uploaded with edits but no attribution. Even my meeting notes somehow ended up in her folders. I spoke up, gently at first. "Hey, just wanted to clarify the quarterlies you sent. That was from the doc I shared earlier." She didn't even look up. Yes, I adjusted a few slides, but the format needed tightening, nothing personal. That was her favorite phrase, nothing personal. It always was. Soon after, my calendar invites for key meetings began disappearing. At first, I thought it was a glitch. Then I realized the meetings weren't being canceled. I was just no longer included. When I brought it up to our internal comms lead, she looked confused. Victoria said she was consolidating the call list to streamline things. I tried to stay composed, tried to tell myself it was just growing pains, that maybe I was reading too much into it. But then, during a department-wide strategy session, I voiced a concern about our messaging shift. Halfway through my sentence, Victoria cut in. "Let's move on," she said, without even making eye contact. "We'll address the actual issue now." That one hurt more than I expected, not because she dismissed the idea, but because she dismissed me. And for the first time, I looked around the table and realized no one else looked surprised. So I started paying attention, tracking patterns, taking notes. Because if I was being pushed out, I needed to understand exactly how she planned to do it. If there was one project that could remind me why I loved this work, it was Vita. Vita wasn't just another product launch. It was personal, a groundbreaking diagnostic tool that could detect early-stage cancers through a single drop of blood, something that could literally save lives. And somehow, against all odds, we had landed the account. I still remember the pitch. I'd walked out of that first meeting with Vita's executive team feeling electric. They didn't want just marketing. They wanted a story, a movement. A campaign that would spark trust, hope, and urgency in equal measure. That was my world. That's where I thrived. Over the next 3 months, I threw myself into the campaign like it was the most important work of my career, because it was. We interviewed patient advocates, mapped out buyer journeys, and built messaging pillars rooted in medical credibility and human impact. Malik crafted stunning visuals that blended clinical clarity with warmth. Lucy wrote copy that made biotech sound like poetry. Jonah's data pulled everything into sharp, strategic focus. We weren't just building slides, we were building a message that mattered. And yes, it came with sacrifices. I canceled a long overdue weekend with my sister, missed 3 date nights in a row with Matt, who eventually stopped texting back altogether. My apartment turned into a crash pad, coffee cups, notebooks, whiteboards. I told myself it was temporary. That once this campaign landed, I'd breathe again. Victoria kept her distance mostly. She showed up to a few reviews, offered vague feedback like, make it punchier or feels too technical. But she didn't challenge our direction, not yet. Every time I looked at that deck, I felt proud. This wasn't just our best work, it was the work, the kind that could define a career. And maybe that's why I didn't see it coming. Because while I was focused on getting everything right, someone else might have been focused on taking it all away. At first, it was just friction, the kind you expect when 2 strong personalities are navigating the same space. But friction turned into interference, and interference turned into quiet, calculated sabotage. Victoria didn't argue, she didn't confront, she just rerouted. Suddenly, Chelsea was being pulled into separate PR meetings to align messaging. Jonah was asked to send performance reports directly to Victoria, bypassing our shared folders. Malik received design feedback on Vita assets that contradicted everything we'd already approved. When I asked about it, he looked uncomfortable. She said you were okay with the pivot, he mumbled. I wasn't. Then came the new approval process, a shiny internal tool we were all strongly encouraged to adopt. It added 3 extra steps to every client-facing piece of work, slowed our turnaround time by days, and created bottlenecks that hadn't existed before. But when I raised concerns in a leadership meeting, Victoria smiled politely and said, "Natalie, I'm sure your team can adapt. These changes are standard across high-performing companies." It wasn't just what she said, it was the tone, like she was humoring a child who didn't understand how grown-up decisions worked. Meanwhile, Erin, my assistant, my anchor, was reassigned temporarily to help Victoria's office during the final stages of Vita. Suddenly, I had no calendar help, no document support, no buffer. Even worse, my team's mood began to shift. Our usually tight-knit group started working later, speaking less. Malik stopped making jokes during meetings. Lucy's energy faded. Jonah kept his headphones in more often than not. Something in the air had changed, but no one would say it out loud. I tried to rally them to keep things moving. "Let's just get through the launch," I said one night after we stayed late finalizing the newest draft. "This is the kind of project people remember." Chelsea looked up and asked quietly, "You think they'll remember us?" That question stuck with me, because deep down I already knew the answer. Not if Victoria had her way. And something told me she was just getting started. The morning started like any other. I got in early, 6:45, just me, the silence, and the glow of the office lights humming awake. I wanted one final run-through of the Vita pitch deck. The launch was tomorrow. Every slide, every number, every word had to be flawless. This was it, the moment we'd been building toward for months. By 8 o'clock, the team started trickling in, but something felt off. No casual banter at the coffee machine, no playlists echoing from Malik's desk, no one made eye contact. Lucy avoided me completely. Chelsea looked like she hadn't slept. Even Jonah, usually unreadable, kept glancing toward the hallway. "Is everything okay?" I asked, forcing calm into my voice. Erin finally answered, quietly. "Victoria called a mandatory department meeting at 9, last minute. Everyone's expected. I didn't get an invite. No one responded. But their silence was louder than anything they could have said. At 9 o'clock, we all filed into the main conference room. Victoria stood at the front, flanked by someone from HR, and I'll never forget this. A building security guard, hands folded, face blank. She didn't waste time. As of today, she began, Natalie Brooks is no longer with Medline Corp, effective immediately. No explanation, no conversation, just a statement of fact delivered to a silent room of stunned faces. My heart pounded, but my body stayed still. I looked at her, then at my team, and said calmly, I understand. I'll gather my things. And then I paused. Just long enough. I hope the 10 a.m. client pitch goes well tomorrow. Victoria blinked. What pitch? I smiled. The Vita launch. The one I've been leading for 4 months. $20 million on the table. They're expecting us. For the first time since she arrived, she didn't have a comeback. HR ushered me out with practiced indifference. The box they gave me barely fit 7 years of my life. But as I walked out, I glanced back at the team, eyes wide, expressions frozen, and realized this wasn't over, not even close. The box sat on the passenger seat beside me, filled with pieces of a life I wasn't ready to leave behind. Framed photos, a half-used notebook, the campaign award we'd won last year for increasing retention by 60%. It looked small in there, insignificant. The drive home felt unreal. I couldn't remember the turns. Just traffic lights blurring past like the last 7 years of my career. By the time I walked into my apartment, the silence hit harder than I expected. I dropped the box on the kitchen counter and stood there, staring at nothing, letting the weight of it finally land. How had this happened? No warning, no conversation, no second chance. Just gone. I spent the next hour pacing, crying, swearing, replaying the moment over and over. Every breath felt sharp, like it was bouncing off something cracked inside me. But then my phone buzzed. Chelsea, are you okay, Jonah? This doesn't feel right at all. Aaron, we didn't know. None of us knew until we got in this morning. One by one, messages poured in. Quiet check-ins. Shock, regret, loyalty. A strange sense of strength started building again beneath the ache. And then another message came through, this one from Vita's marketing director. We just heard about your departure. Is everything all right, James? Our CEO was under the impression you'd be leading tomorrow's presentation. Can you call us? I stared at it. This could be it. A clean break. Let the whole campaign crash without me. Let Victoria deal with the fallout she so carefully set up. After all, wasn't that justice? But would letting it burn make me feel better? Would dragging my team down with her prove anything? Or would it just make me bitter? I sat with those questions. Maybe revenge would feel good for a minute. But what would feel better? Doing the right thing, on my terms, for the right reasons. The phone buzzed again. It was Vita's CEO this time, James Richardson, calling directly. I took a deep breath and answered. Rebecca, what's going on over there? James's voice came through the speaker, steady, concerned, and unmistakably frustrated. We've been planning this launch for months, he said. Now I hear our lead strategist is gone, less than 24 hours before the presentation. I took a slow breath. It wasn't my choice. I was let go this morning. A pause. Then, that's shocking. Honestly, I don't know how we're supposed to move forward without you. You were the reason we signed with Medline Corp. That hit hard, because I had given everything to that partnership, and he knew it. James lowered his voice. Would you be open to consulting just to help us through tomorrow? We don't want to reschedule, but I don't feel confident with the direction we're hearing from their new leadership. I didn't answer right away, because here's the truth. I could help. I still had the knowledge, the insights, the strategy behind every slide. The team was probably scrambling right now, trying to piece together something presentable. They'd been left in the dark, just like I had. But was it my job to save the company that had just kicked me to the curb? I sat in silence for a while after we hung up, stared out the window at the city lights. I wasn't doing this for Medline Corp or for Victoria. I was doing it for the work, for the people, for the campaign we had built with heart, purpose, and integrity. And for the team who'd stood by me long before things went south. So I called James back. "I'll help," I said, "but on my terms." I asked for a formal consulting agreement, a single-day contract, no strings, no office return. And I made one thing crystal clear. If I stepped into that room tomorrow, my team would get the recognition they earned, publicly and in front of the client. James didn't hesitate. Done. And just like that, I had one more pitch. One more shot to show them who I was with or without a title. The next morning, I put on my best suit and walked back into the building I was never supposed to enter again. The moment I stepped through the revolving glass doors, time slowed. Same lobby, same polished floors, same receptionist who blinked in confusion as she saw me. But this time, I wasn't swiping my badge. I was signing in as a guest, a visitor in the building I once helped shape. Security escorted me upstairs, but not like before. This time, there was no box in my hands, no sting of humiliation, just a calm, focused presence. When I walked into the prep room, my team turned toward me. The air shifted. Malik stood first. "You actually came." Jonah gave a small nod. "We didn't think we'd get through this without you." Erin smiled with something like relief in her eyes. "We kept your seat. And for the first time in days, I felt steady again." We had 20 minutes before the client arrived, just enough time to review the deck and recalibrate not just the presentation, but ourselves. Then Victoria walked in. She glanced at me, trying to mask her surprise. "I wasn't aware you'd be joining." "At the client's request," I replied simply. Before she could say more, James arrived with his team, including Vita's CEO. The energy in the room turned electric. Introductions were made. Then James looked directly at me and said, "We'd like Natalie to walk us through the strategy. She knows it better than anyone." Victoria opened her mouth, but before she could object, the CEO added, "That's non-negotiable." The power shifted. Instantly, I took my place at the head of the table, clicked the remote, and started the pitch. I knew like second nature, because I had built it. Every insight, every creative element, every data point was rooted in the work my team and I had poured our hearts into. And I didn't just lead, I gave credit. Malik designed this visual flow to match your user onboarding. Jonah's projections informed this channel mix. Chelsea's research shaped the messaging that tested best. The room was engaged, responsive, impressed. For 2 hours, I wasn't the ex-employee. I was the expert. When the presentation ended, there was a pause. Then the CEO smiled and said, "We're ready to move forward. With one condition." She turned to James. "We want Natalie to stay on as our lead strategist." And just like that, the story flipped. But the real decision, the one that would define my next chapter, was still mine to make. The meeting room had emptied out, but I was still standing there, surrounded by used coffee cups, half-closed laptops, and the faint hum of fluorescent lights overhead. The client was thrilled. The contract was secured, and somehow, against every odd, I had taken back control of the narrative. But now came the question I wasn't expecting to face so soon. What happens next? Michael, the CEO of Medline Corp, pulled me aside. His tone was measured, almost diplomatic. "Natalie, I think we both know yesterday was mishandled." I didn't say anything, just waited. He continued, "I'd like to offer you reinstatement with a promotion, Senior Director of Client Strategy. Report directly to me, full autonomy, 30% salary bump." I almost laughed. Not because the offer wasn't tempting on paper, it was everything I'd worked for. But that wasn't the point anymore, because something had shifted. I had tasted what it felt like to lead with nothing but my voice. No title, no email signature, no corporate badge. Just clarity, conviction, and the respect I had earned, not demanded. So I looked at Michael and said, "I appreciate the offer, truly. But I think my future lies somewhere else." Later that night, I called James from Vita. I'd like to accept the position, I said. The relief in his voice was instant. Welcome aboard, Natalie. We've been waiting for someone like you. The next few weeks moved fast. Contract negotiations, transition meetings, quiet goodbyes with the team I had grown with, and in some cases, carried through storms no one else saw. Malik, Chelsea, Aaron, 3 of them chose to follow me. The others stayed, but we promised to keep in touch. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was leaving something behind. I was walking towards something new. But even as I settled into my new office at Vita, one thought kept circling in my mind. What did all of this teach me? And what would I do differently now that I had the power to build from scratch? It's been almost a year since I walked out of Medline Corps the first time with a box in my hands and the second time with my head held high. Today, I'm leading the strategy division at Vita. We've already launched 2 successful campaigns, hired a full in-house team, and just signed a new initiative focused on women's health, something I've always been passionate about. Malik is our creative director now. Chelsea runs partnerships. Erin manages the entire operations calendar like she was born for it. We built something real, not out of revenge, but out of clarity, purpose, respect. As for Victoria, I heard through the grapevine that her tone has softened. Not because of some grand transformation, but because she realized something the hard way. A title doesn't equal trust. And Michael, he called last month, said, "You proved something I think we all needed to see." We ended the call on good terms. No bitterness, no backhanded apologies, just closure. But here's what I've come to believe, and what I wish someone had told me earlier. Your reputation isn't built in your best moments, it's built in your hardest ones. When everything feels unfair, when you're angry, hurt, dismissed, that's when you decide who you really are. I could have burned bridges, let it all crash, and walked away with a smug smile. But I chose something else. And that choice, that moment of integrity, opened a door I didn't even know was waiting. So let me ask you, what would you do if someone tried to erase everything you built? Would you fight, forgive, walk away, or rise above it? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your story.